Yeah, this is Worship and Word Conversations Saturday afternoon, Sabbath afternoon. Kick off your shoes. Most of the time, we don't wear shoes. Relax, and we take these biblical principles, spiritual ideas, and we make them super practical so that we could have a good week. That's what we do here, and our conversation goes anywhere and everywhere in Jesus' name.
In Jesus' name.
In Jesus' name, we are here. Chris, how you feeling today, man? Especially after last night.
Feeling full,
Yeah.
filled. You guys really filled off spirits yesterday.
Yeah, yeah,
Testimonies, um, praise reports. Used to say back in the literature evangelism days, PTL, praise the
praise
Lord.
the Lord. Praise the Lord, everybody.
Yeah.
There was a whole lot of that going on last night. If you were hanging out with us, you know what we're talking about. If not, feel free to go back and watch the previous recording where we just, man, it was just, this is what God is doing in my life and the life of the people around me.
Yeah.
That's what all of last night's session was about, and it was a truly a blessing to be a part of that
Mhm.
last night. So yeah, Donnie Lane hanging out with us, Cerise with us as well. Hey, good afternoon, Cerise. Take the mic off. It's no mic. All right, she'll figure out what I'm talking about.
Oh,
Take
okay.
the mic off. There's no mic. Yeah, man. So today, man, I want to talk about this idea of when bias blocks blessing. Not
Whoosh.
trying to say that three times fast. And there was a
Bias blocks blessing, bias block, bias.
see, you stuck, you stuck. I'm stuck too.
Oh,
But I do want to talk about. I want us to kind of talk about this and wrestle with this and look at what the Bible reveals to us and the danger of this as it relates to our personal spirituality
man.
and faith. But before we jump into that, man, I want to ask you, and I want to ask our Worship and Word family, our Worship and Word community, what's something you're looking forward to as it relates to this upcoming week? What's something you're looking forward to?
Hmm. I'm looking forward to crushing it professionally. Um,
Okay.
yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. Looking forward to I got a couple of projects that'll be due by this coming Friday, and so a lot of my looking forward to. Man, I don't know what happens every time I go live.
Hey, where's your
You know
tea?
what it is? Listen, listen, y'all. Listen. Like I be coming in stocked. Like, that's like sometimes I gotta leave midstream because I'm just um. So yeah, season in my life. A lot of it is centered around I guess it's always been this way. Uh, like it's been any different work profession. So that's definitely something that I'm looking forward to, and and yeah, I'm pretty sure there's some other things as well, but that's I think the main. Oh, a new gym experience, y'all.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Forward to a new gym experience. I didn't tell y'all this last night, but uh, because I was so used to the Smith machine. So those of you that know what the Smith machine is, it's the actual where the barbell is connected to rails. The more weight that you put on, especially when you're doing squats, it actually is not really good for you, right? So, switching to a gym that actually is going to have a power rack where the barbell is free, and you have to learn how to balance better. Yo, P, I took off the weights. But the way that I took them off was because I was used to the rails always holding up the barbell. So I just took off all the heavy weights on one side, and then I go to the other side of the barbell. I'm just like pulling them off, and somebody had to come and run at me like, "Yo, hold up," because the other side of the barbell was about to just because there's nothing on that side anymore.
Yeah.
And I said, "Man," and I told him, "Yo, I'm so used to Planet Fitness." He was like, "All right, I get it." Um, Crazy, it's crazy. So all of that to say, training wheels are off, y'all. So
Yeah.
looking forward to a new experience. So that's another thing as well. Um, as I am growing, um, can't go back to the old stuff.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah, y'all. I mean, sometimes you always
starting early.
Listen, oftentimes you like to just use that for relationships, but man, it's for everything.
Come
Right?
on.
It's not just friendships, it's not
Come
just intimacy, but finances, health. Like there's just some practices, there's some routines, regimens that you can't go back to. Some
back.
gyms you just can't go back. As a matter of fact,
Yep.
so the one that I'm going to costs more, but the vibe is different.
Mm-hmm.
I actually made like 3 new friends in the first.
Of course.
First, I was like, wow, this is like we sharing apps. Like, yo, what you use for the da da da? I'm like, yo, this is what I use, man, for how I live weights or whatever. I was like, and this dude is he like,
yeah,
and he's coming on. I was like, wow, it's different.
Yep.
It's different, and you go to the anyway. We're not going. The whole point is when you develop differently and when you grow differently, you also need to thrive in a different environment that's going to be able to withstand, not even withstand, but really just receive the capacity that you're now in.
Yeah.
Like you've outgrown that joint. So
man.
Anyway,
Ooh, man.
That's what I look forward to. That was a long explanation. That's what I look forward to.
No, that's good. That's good. Carmilla's checking in with us. Hazel's checking in as well. Delma says looking forward to days off this week. Teresa going to the cookout. We're gonna be outside. Yeah.
Gonna be outside.
Gonna be outside. Carlise is looking forward to Falls Fall. There's a meme. I don't know if it's a meme. I don't even know what to call it. It's a social media post, and it says, really what really happens in the DMV. And there's like False Fall. There's like Dead of Winter. There's it's saying it's not 4 seasons. It's 12.
Oh, man.
So after False Fall, I think is like late summer or the last parts of summer.
Yeah.
Before you go into real fall. So it's hilarious. I'm gonna try to look it up. So yeah, she in that False Fall, wearing the hoodies. Aaron said, looking forward to kids being out of school Monday and Tuesday, because man, week 1 was crazy, right? Week 1 was crazy. I can't start this week. So yeah, looking forward to that. Man, I was doing some traveling recently. I was texting you when I was in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
I told you this is my first time in a Sky Lounge. I've traveled.
It's different.
I've traveled just a lot, and this is the first time where I said, you know what, I'm gonna go in this Sky Lounge, and I'm gonna pay. I think it was $50 for a day pass because my layover was about 3 hours.
Yeah, that's torture. Without anything to do, that's torture.
So I'm looking around, man. I'm looking around, processing. Am I really gonna spend this $50 to go into the Sky Lounge? And I'm watching people. I'm watching them eat. And they're trying to find a comfortable place to sit, and they're crammed in some sections, and everybody looks uncomfortable and they look miserable. And I'm saying, man, do I really want to spend this $50 for 3 hours? I could just grab something to eat and post up somewhere, and I could be okay. But I was like, nah, man, nah. Like you doing
go ahead.
You're doing different things now. So
yeah,
pay the $50, go into the Sky Lounge. Let me tell you, I don't know if I could go back.
Yeah. I
walk into the Sky Lounge and I say, hey, I want a day pass. And they say, okay, let's see your travel itinerary to make sure that you're flying on this airline, all of that. Pull it up, show it to them. They're like, okay, cool. It's $50. Pay the $50. And she says, have you ever been here before? I said, nah, I've never been to the Sky Lounge before. She said, okay. Well, there's food. There's food around the corner. Complimentary food around the corner. All you can eat, all you can drink is a pop machine. I'm from the Midwest, so it was a pop machine. I know it might be a soda machine for you, but it was a pop machine around the corner. You could just get all the drink. There's a little cooler, granola bars, yogurt, grab anything that you want. And you're just looking out at the airport, and it's quiet. There's workstations there. There are tables. And then she said, upstairs, if you want, more excitement, there's a huge TV, and there's people sitting at the bar having conversations. But go wherever you want to go. And it was almost like I wasn't in the airport anymore.
It's different.
It was literally a different world inside of the airport.
Mhm.
It was quiet. I could get some work done. I could, get my Wi-Fi. I could get a little snack. I could take a nap. It was so peaceful and quiet for those 3 hours, about 2.5.
Mm.
And then after it was over, I walked out of the Sky Lounge into the regular airport, and I was like, wow. I don't know if I could go back to traveling and I have a layover without this respite.
Yeah.
You just can't go back.
Yeah.
You have to travel differently after having this experience. And how many times when we have those experiences in our lives where different opportunities open up to us, or we make a transition, that we try to force ourselves back into a Planet Fitness mindset.
Ooh.
We force ourselves back into, man, I have 4 hours before my next plane.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to sit on this hard seat and try to find something comfortable, even though I know the experience of Sky Lounge. I know the experience of peace and quiet and amenities and all you can eat food and comfortable seating. I know that.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I'm just going to go back to the way things used to be. So, man, you kind of just set me off when you were talking about going back.
Man, when you do different, you move different.
Yeah. That's true. Is that on a t-shirt?
Nah, but it can be.
Oh yeah. Yeah. we'll go pray on the back. April says Sky Lounge will change your total travel experience. How come you didn't tell me? I know April travels regularly. Y'all ain't even tell me. I'm on planes, trains, automobiles. Y'all not telling me about the Sky Lounge. I sent a text message to my old boss from years ago, because maybe like 15 years ago, because he said, hey, whenever you travel, use the Sky Lounge. This was 15 years ago.
Oh man.
No, I'm not using. I'd send him a text, man, 15 years later.
I get it.
Like, I get it. I get it. All right. Erin's looking forward to the news that 2 of her friends that have COVID are testing negative. Yep. Looking forward to that in Jesus' name.
Claim it.
We're going to the beach. Hazel's going to the beach.
Okay.
Maybe going to the beach. Yeah. Go to the beach. Rose said church ladies are getting together tonight for dinner. Looking forward to some fellowship. Yeah. Okay. Good. And Rose, let them serve you. Okay. You were talking about this last night. You're trying to be independent, do all this stuff yourself. You're going to be in fellowship. It's all right. And Rose is one of those, man, super selfless, super hardworking. What can I do for you people?
Yeah.
So I know it's killing you right now, Rose. But yeah,
to literally be off your feet.
You off your feet. You gotta be easy. You gotta be easy. And so, yeah, feel free to drop it in if something you're looking forward to this week, this upcoming week, as we continue to have our conversation. For the bulk of what we want to talk about today, and I'm gonna just let y'all know, Chris don't completely know. 75% of the time, he don't really know when we do worship and word conversations where it's gonna go.
No idea.
It just kind of goes. We prayed, and it just kind of goes. Yeah. So I want to start off with this question, Chris, and y'all feel free to drop this in. And if I gotta be forward on this one, I have no problem doing that. But what's something that you clearly feel like God said that He wants you to do or wants you to accomplish? Yeah, we go in there. What's something that you feel like, in your prayer, your devotion, your meditation, and conversation with other people, you go back in your personal narrative 10 years or so, or however long, or something that's been on your heart, and you feel like, man, God is calling me to do this thing, to do this X, Y, or Z, this ministry, this task, this goal. What is that thing? Now, don't be shy now as we're beginning to have this conversation. Yeah, see, Cerise is like, why do we have to go there? Because I got to come for y'all a little bit because the Holy Spirit came for me. The Holy Spirit was like, okay, I need to talk to you. We need to have a seat.
He need to talk to you. Not to me, not to us.
No. You got to share. So, Rose said, slowly dying from not being able to serve. All right.
I know
Yeah.
she's
So
suffering.
we got the question hanging out there as we're wrestling with what we're looking forward to the next week. Don't forget the question. What's something you feel like God has called you to do? Something's placed on your heart, whatever burden that is. Go ahead and drop that in as we're filling in each other about what we're excited, what we're looking forward to in the upcoming week. Yeah, Donna said looking forward to getting some work done around the house, organizing. Yeah. It's a lot, man. I know a lot of us coming out of summer, going into fall. We didn't do the spring cleaning. We ain't do it. We ain't do it.
We ain't do it.
So,
all right, man. Let's just
nope.
Let's just get out the bag.
Nope.
We ain't. Okay.
Nope.
Right.
Nope.
All right.
We gonna let it. We gonna let it linger. We gonna let it linger. This is the
All
question. This is the question.
All right.
Question is, and Cerise already know. Why do we have to go there? We gotta go there. It's part of the community. We gotta go there.
I'm gonna say I can help break the ice.
What's something that you feel like God has told you this is what you need to do? Oh, see? Uh-huh. Yep. He placed on me to foster a child and to write a book.
Yeah.
Yep. Whew.
Oh, now they rolling in. They're
rolling
in now.
Yep.
Versus I think for me in the past, and even currently, God has called me to help facilitate networks of young Christians.
That's what used to say. You on our toes, P. Man, listen.
Yeah.
Listen. We got foster a child, write a book, help facilitate networks of young Christians. Yo, just drop it in. Just drop it in. What's the thing, or what are the things that you feel like God is calling me to do this, or He's been saying it for a long time? Even go back to childhood. You feel like God is going to drop this thing on you, and you've been wrestling with it over the years. So as you're dropping those in, Chris, here's one of the tough questions that we're wrestling with today. We're gonna look at this from a scriptural perspective. Stop, Pastor Jemison. I'm not even gonna put that on the screen. Stop it.
I mean, what if
Nah, we already know. Right. Yeah, we gotta have Pastor Jemison back, man. Just doing some great things in Philly. So this is what Cerise said, man. Listen. Man, Chris, read this.
They're stepping on the toes of us who's supposed to be doing this too. Whoosh. Yeah. Cerise says, but on a good note, I finally finished my outline and met with a publishing group.
Yeah.
Trust me, I've made that progress just because of this here community.
Yeah. So here's the question I want to ask as we're wrestling with, and I know some of us aren't saying it or putting in the comments, we're saying it out loud with the people that we're with, or we're just kind of processing our journal. What have you personally done when God showed you the goal or the task to be accomplished, the writing the book and fostering a child, helping to facilitate networks of young Christians? Like, this is the goal. This is the ministry. This is the burden. This is the end result or major milestone. What have you done personally? What have I done personally with the space between where I am now and what the ultimate thing is? El Marie says, lead a women's ministry, not to be women's ministry leader, but lead a ministry to women external to the church. All right. Yeah. Woo. And this is heavy because I've been wrestling with this for a little bit. And what if some of us are missing out on the fulfillment of the thing that God has placed on us because we have filled the space between where we are now and the accomplishment of the thing that God has positioned us to work toward? What if we fill that space with, this is the way I think it should be? what if we fill that space with our own ideas of how this is supposed to work out, and we're missing the movement of God because the trajectory to get to what God has placed on our hearts does not look like what we thought it was going to be. Woo, yeah. Like that's what I've been wrestling with, and that's what I want us to wrestle with for a little bit. Where have we lost some opportunities to make advances for God's glory and for our good? Make advances for the kingdom, because the things that were coming our way, the opportunities that were coming our way, that may have been spirit led, did not fit inside the picture that we have already painted for how we're going to accomplish what God has placed on our heart. I'm just yeah. So Aaron says so much space is filled with our ideas. Yeah, we definitely go in there. So Hazel says, so years ago, before I got my BA business degree, I wanted to be a stylist. I dismissed it, but it resurfaced again a few years ago, and I convinced myself that I was too old to start now. Fast forward a few years, and after wrestling with if I can be a stylist as a Christian woman, would it align with what God wants me to be? God is now setting up the space in my mind and physically where it can happen.
Yeah, he is. Oh yeah. It's good. Faye.
Listen. Carmilla says, sharing my music, writing articles, putting my lyrics to music, fine-tuning my piano and flute skills. As a seasoned citizen, is there still room for me in the scheme of things? Man.
Short answer, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Sounds like a multi-potentialite.
Yeah.
Marie says, I think what God has for me, I initially ran from because it required a level of transparency that I was afraid to have here in the Caribbean. Yeah, we savage. When I gave that fear up, things started to unveil before me. Yeah. P, sometimes God has you to do it, but not for the rest of your life.
Times and season.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I had to come to grips with. Just because he tells you to do it, doesn't mean that you are supposed to keep. Sometimes things change.
They do.
Sometimes people change.
Oh man.
And based on the circumstance, context, and just what is going on, got to be like, okay, time to move. So sometimes it's not even what we think it looks like, but it's also how long we think we should be doing it. And sometimes it's the reverse. Sometimes we think it is for a season. He's like, nah, this is your lot in life, homie.
This is it. Man, so let's wrestle with this, man. Let's wrestle with this idea of implicit bias. Let's do that, and then I want us to go to Luke 9. Implicit bias. This is a conversation that people are having a lot as it relates to our world, as we're having conversations about social justice. A lot of the people we deal with, Chris, now are in corporate America, and this idea of do we have fair and equitable practices? Do we have fair and equitable practices? And this idea of implicit bias just comes up. So what if, how many times have you been in a situation where, and you got to jump back to pre-COVID for a lot of this, where someone says, hey, let's go get a bite to eat. And you're like, cool. And they suggest a place. And you say, I don't really like that place. And they say, well, have you ever been there? And the answer is, nah. Something about I just don't like. Something about the name I just don't like. Or the geographic location, or the color scheme of the logo. Like I just don't, I can't put my finger on it, but I just don't like it. And what's being activated in that moment is what we might determine as implicit bias. Implicit bias, in the way that it's talked about today, popularly talked about today, is when you have a dislike or disdain for a particular segment of people, but you don't really know why. You just don't like them. And there are all types of tests that you can take, and analysis that you can take to determine whether or not you have an implicit bias. And I remember taking one of those tests a couple of years ago, and I saw that everyone that I spoke to regularly looked like me, sounded like me, acted like me. And it was like, wait, is there room in this for variation?
Yeah.
Or am I cutting off opportunities to meet some amazing people? Because at a subconscious level, I really only like this type of people.
Yeah.
I know none of us in the worship and word community have to deal with that. But I know for me, coming face to face with, there are some people I've said no to just because I didn't like them for a reason that I could not put my finger on. And I'm not on some old spiritual, the Holy Spirit was like, nah, be easy, be careful of that person. Not that. It was just something about them that I said, nah, I'm not interested. And when you look at implicit bias, there's so many things that go into it. The home you grew up in, and how the home you grew up in referenced different people or different scenarios.
Come on now.
The media consumption, right? The media consumption, the fact that they put when they're playing certain news stories, they show certain pictures at certain times, and when they're playing other news stories, they show other pictures at other times. That feeds into your bias. And even the group of people that you're hanging out with right now, that impacts how you navigate situation. A good question here, Cerise asks, is, okay, so how do we know the difference between bias and intuition? I think this is a great question for you, Chris.
Well, the spiritual answer,
yeah,
Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord, right? He says not to lean not unto your own understanding or intuition, but in all your ways acknowledge him. So there's that side, but there's also a scientific side. There's a methodical. There's a way that you can test whether or not, if your intuition is correct. I would argue that your intuition is implicit bias.
Ooh.
Now, some people would argue that your intuition is the Holy Spirit, and so sometimes we, conflate like that thing that you get, and that's the Spirit moving. Could be, but what if your intuition is implicitly biased? So that whenever you say, I don't like that vibe, but there's somebody else who resonates with the vibe that you don't resonate with. So if intuition could very well be implicitly biased, then if we want to go down the biblical route, we can say to test the spirits to see whether these things are true or not. So that means that you would actually have to ask yourself a set of questions that is going to, in a sense, check to see whether or not your intuition is valid. Here's another question. Is your intuition always 100% accurate?
Hmm.
So oftentimes we'll say, trust your gut, trust your intuition. But then you have to ask yourself, is my intuition always correct all of the time, 100% of the time? If it is, then implicit bias or not, you're going to make the decision and you've made the accurate decision.
Yeah.
That's Here's the other thing too, guys. This is so layered. Intuition is typically connected to self-preservation.
Yeah.
So some people call it the reptilian brain and, fight or flight. And so there's that side too, right? And so technically your intuition could be 100% accurate because it's designed to preserve you.
Yeah, protect you.
Right, protect you. So there's that side too. I will say this. I actually saw this in an article, and I might be butchering it, but there are probably a few questions, simple questions that you can ask yourself to see whether or not your intuition should be followed.
Yeah.
Now this one actually goes with discussions, so this might not be. You would have to find your set of questions, and I'm sure we call that heuristics. You'll probably have to find the heuristics for this, and I'm pretty sure there's somewhere in the word that says that answers them. But think of this as a scenario, guys. Whether or not you should be the person to respond in or to reply in a particular conversation when somebody's saying something, you ask yourself 3 questions. Question number 1 is, does this need a response?
Come on, Professor, break this down for us.
Not everything that warrants a response actually should be responded to. And it could be for anything, not because you're in an argument but sometimes, even though it probably, you could, maybe I shouldn't use the word warrant, but you could actually reply to it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, right? Does it need a response? Here's the second question. Does it need a response from me? You may not necessarily need to be the person to actually answer the thing.
That's good.
The other one is, or the third one is, does it need a response from me right now? So now it's okay. Maybe it's yes, it needs a response. Yes, it's going to be me who needs to do it. But do I need to reply right now? This, whether if it's an email or whether if it's in person. And so imagine the times, intuition, where you were about to write an email.
Yo.
And you wrote it out. Intuition. You wrote it out. But then you said, delete. You got it out your system. And you said, you know what? It's not that deep.
That's good. Yeah.
So what was your intuition? Was it the intuition to actually write the email out, or was it the intuition to actually say, you know what? I don't need to send it. All right. So I think that it's very layered. On one side, you can argue that the intuition is directly connected to the spirit. He speaks to the part in us that reacts to things that may not necessarily warrant logic 100% of the time. But it's more of a feeling. It's more of that gut reaction. You can argue that. You can also argue that it's something that is a system designed to self-preserve or to protect. So it may not be spirit inherently, but perhaps the spirit can tap into the thing that you are, right? So there's that too.
Yeah.
Or it can very well just be that it could be both. It can be that your intuition is baked with implicit biases because of nature and because of nurture. I think Lana, was it Lana, I think, that said, or El Marie, who said, listen, because of the upbringing or me not wanting to do certain things because of my Caribbean environment, and so her intuition, at least initially, was, I'm not going to put that out there because if I do, I think it's going to get torn apart.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess the question is, if it's, determining if it's whether it's intuition or if it's implicit bias. I guess the real question might be whether I follow my implicit bias, because let's be real, sometimes your implicit bias is accurate. New gym that I'm going to got the same kind of people that they that's over at Planet Fitness. My implicit bias, oh man, New facility, same folk. Oh goodness, like implicit bias. And so Elmarie says, I think we see the difference in hindsight. Intuition is not easily explained, as in why we did X, Y, or Z, but bias involves opinions we have of others and situations so we can see why and even justify to ourselves and others why we did X, Y, or Z. Yeah, I think that whether it is your intuition or your implicit bias, you should have the freedom and the power to question both.
Yeah.
Question your implicit bias, because your implicit bias could very well be accurate. I know we don't like to hear that sometimes, but no, sometimes it is. I'm saying it's not all the time, but the same thing with your intuition. And so I think one of the ways that you can check whether or not your thinking is I don't want to use the word accurate, but perhaps it's healthy to have a set of questions.
We were at the Maryland State Fair a couple of days ago, and at one of the stands, there was a young lady selling just random stuff, like stuffed animals and hats and streamers and light up toys, all of this stuff that you see at the fair. I look on the name tag, and she's from Michigan. Not only is she from Michigan, she's from the general facility, the metropolitan Detroit area, the same general vicinity that I'm from. And part of me was like, man, I think she's going to take care of us just because she's from Michigan.
Yes, my people.
Like,
yeah,
she don't know me.
Yeah.
I didn't tell her I was from Michigan.
We
never met before. We don't have any connection. But I assume all types of goodwill, and I have all this respect and willingness to talk to this person simply because their name tag says that they're from Michigan. Like, that's an example of your bias just jumping in,
right,
and pushing you to do certain things.
Yeah, and it doesn't always have to be a negative.
Yeah. Like some of you don't wear red. It has nothing to do with gang affiliation in the city where you grew up. It's just maybe your grandmother didn't like red. And your grandmother said, I don't like red because red doesn't go with my skin tone or whatever. I don't like red. Or people who wear red are X, Y, and Z. And you heard your grandmama say that when you were little. So now you're in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, and you're at the store and you see a red shirt and you're like, nah, I don't do red.
Yeah.
It's these things that could be baked in for whatever reason. And I agree with you, Chris. We got to question where these notions, these opinions, these perspectives come from, because there are times when they can be completely harmful, especially when we're in, making decisions about career or who to partner with for ministry or who to serve. Where does my bias come in? That shackles that, and where does it come in as self-preservation protection in either way, kind of questioning what actually is going on. So there's a couple of references that I want to look at as we're continuing to talk through this. And the first one is in Luke chapter 9, verses 51 through 56. Luke chapter 9, verses 51 through 56. And we're continuing the conversation about, bias. And the question that we were asking in the beginning, what's the thing that God has called you to do? And you feel like because God didn't give you play-by-play for everything, that you had to fill in the gaps. And where have we filled in the gaps? Really sometimes with our own bias. So Luke 9, verse 51 says, now it came to pass when the time had come for him to be received up, him being Jesus, that he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem. Whenever you see that phrase, he set his face to go to Jerusalem, it's indicative of Jesus thinking about crucifixion. So he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem, and he sent messengers before his face. And as they went, they entered a village of the Samaritans to prepare for him. But they did not receive him because his face was set for the journey to Jerusalem. And when his disciples James and John saw this, they said, Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, just as Elijah did? But he turned and rebuked them and said, you do not know what manner of spirit you are, for the Son of Man did not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. And they went to another village. The reason why I bring this up, because we're going to Luke 10, chapter 30, is I want us to just wrestle with the implicit bias that Jews and Samaritans had against each other. Like when a Jew saw a Samaritan, it was a problem. When a Samaritan saw a Jew, it was a problem. And Jesus is getting ready to do ministry, do work in the Samaritan village, and he sends the disciples to say, hey, Jesus coming through. This is what the experience is going to be like. And the village is like, nah, we're good. We actually don't want Jesus here. So the disciples say, okay, well, let's just burn down the village.
The whole thing.
Let's burn it down. Elijah called down fire from heaven. We can call down fire from heaven. We just burn the whole village. And Jesus says, now you really, y'all talking like y'all got an evil spirit. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the question that you have to ask in this section is, why did the disciples feel like that is the appropriate response to rejection from this group of people? Why did they say, let's destroy them? What was it about this relationship that put them in a place where they were like, let's just wipe them off the face of the earth? All right. So I see y'all in the in the comments, y'all getting warm. Let's take a couple of these and then come back. El Marie says, maybe we can apply a form of Socratic questioning to this. It's a technique in therapy where we teach clients to ask specific questions of their thoughts and opinions and either accept or reject. They seek clarification, they probe assumptions, they look for reason and evidence, implications, consequences, and alternatives. Basically processing things through systematically so we understand. And if we apply that Socratic questioning to this framework, you would have to sit down and ask the disciples, like, why?
Yeah.
What's the assumption that you have? What's the reason for this behavior? What's the implications? If we call down fire from heaven and burn up all these people, what's going to be the consequences? What are the alternatives? Let's get an understanding here.
I think more often than not, we think of the fact that, well, God could call me to do something that's super illogical.
Yep.
Let me tell you, it's harder to accept the advice that El Marie just dropped in the comments when you have had consistent,
that's good,
supernatural, illogical directions that have gone against your intuition, and then you say, oh wow, because if I didn't, God, I see. But I'm gonna let y'all know, unless he has called you to a life of that,
a life of,
it's a season. You have to get back down into the valley and use the tools. She put a few things in here, few keywords here: techniques, system, therapy. These are things that God also provides.
Wait. Hold on. Because there's the thought, Chris.
I rebuke it.
There's a thought, man. I ain't even get it out before you rebuke.
You don't even need to. You need
to. There's a thought that God is in the dreams. God is in the vision. God is in the somebody told me to tell you, or God told me to tell you, that God is in that. And maybe we don't say it out loud, but we act like it.
Yeah.
There's a thought that God is in that, but God is not in the Socratic questioning. That God is not in the excuse me, God is not in the therapeutic measures. God is not in. Let's clarify. Let's figure out the origin of your assumptions, and let's talk about the consequences of what you're proposing to do.
Because even the word Socratic for a lot of us says pagan.
Yeah, you think it's Socrates, and he was a pagan, and yeah. So we totally dismiss, and again, that's bias coming in. We totally dismiss that God can show up in more than one way.
Oh, like common sense?
like they're stop. Oh, man, was it a t-shirt that said like stop praying for miracles when you've avoided common sense?
All right. Sometimes we use intuition as an excuse to not do the things that is just right in front of us to do.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate what Ella Marie just dropped there, because for a lot of your challenges, listen, God has created a scientific world. That means that this world can be discovered. It can be proven with techniques, systems, repeatedly. That's what a system is. And the same thing goes for how we operate, how we think, it's some of us are addicted to chaos.
Yeah.
And because of not having a system in place, even something as simple as a routine, we project that to how we believe God works. Oh, well, the spirit, you don't know where it comes or where it goes and how it. Yeah, I say that to your boss the next time he decides not to pay you.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't think systematically. The spirit told him that y'all should get paid for y'all. Systems, right? So, and it's a balance.
It is.
And I think that's where the lean not unto your own understanding. I think that we have maybe two camps or two sides of the spectrum, where we have individuals who are they're so heavenly minded, they're of no earthly good. And then you've got the people who are so rational. They're rationalists. I believe that is one of the 9 worldviews. It's either rationalism or naturalism, where there's no room for God. There's no room for the supernatural. There's no room for any kind of there's no room for miracles to happen. There's no room for something to upset the order of the system that you have been operating in, so that things could happen even more glorious for you. So don't want to take us off task there, but I think that's important to address, that you need both. You need both. When Jesus showed up, as it says there in Luke 9, he set his face toward Jerusalem. That's because God methodically put prophets in place in the past for that moment that was going to happen very soon. So it's both. It's definitely both.
So let's look at Luke 10, because Rose and Donna, I want to bring in some of the things that they shared. Luke 10, beginning verse 25. And behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tested him, saying, "Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life?" Okay, so this sentence is interesting to me when you think about the function of lawyers in this culture. So when we say law, we're talking Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. It's referred to as Torah, and the laws that govern Jewish culture and life were taken from the Torah. And so it was called Torah law or Mosaic law. And when you're a lawyer, you have 3 primary functions. Number 1, you got to study it. You got to study the Torah. And quite often the people who studied it copied it, made the copies of it. So they knew it. Number 2, you taught it, especially in the synagogue, to younger generations. So you studied it, you taught it, and number 3, you interpreted it. So if there were legal matters, if there were cases that needed to be decided, they would bring in the expert in Torah law, the lawyer, to provide an interpretation of what was written in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. But this is the context of what's happening here. Remember, in Luke 9, Jesus was supposed to be in this Samaritan village, but the Samaritan village didn't want him. Bias. Jews and Samaritans don't get along. The disciples like, they don't want us. Let's burn down the village. Jesus like, chill. We'll just go to another village. And even that response is a different spirit. So now they're having these conversations about, you know, the 70 are sent out and they're going out to do places. They're going out to do ministry in places where there is bias against them, not just Samaritan bias, but bias coming from everywhere. I mean, one of the biggest ones, Chris, is the fact that they're learning from a teacher that wasn't trained in the traditional schools. It's a huge bias against Jesus and his disciples for this.
Yeah.
So they're having these kind of conversations, and a lawyer walks up to Jesus and says, what should I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus is so smooth. He says, so what's written in the law? The reason why Jesus is asking him what's written in the law is because his function is to study and copy, teach, and interpret the law. Jesus comes to him in his area of expertise. And he answered and said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, you have answered rightly, do this and live. But he, wanting to justify himself, another translation of that is to appear righteous, says to Jesus, who's my neighbor? So Jesus says, let me tell you a story. A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a certain priest came down that road. At this point in the story, when you hear priest, what's your implicit bias? This person's holy. And you have on this side, this person is holy. This person has conversation with God. This person's going to do the right thing.
Yeah.
At the same time, this person is an adherent to the customs. And the law says, the interpretation of the law says, don't do anything that would defile you. So Jesus says, when the priest saw him, he went by on the other side. Verse 32, likewise, a Levite, when he arrived at the place, came and looked and passed by on the other side. So all priests were Levites, but not all Levites were priests. And this Levite function, this Levite could have been a singer, could have been an attendant to the temple. He still has some religious function that he keeps up. But we're seeing these people who are supposed to be ministers in the culture, the priest and the Levite, who see a person in distress, and both of them say, not today.
Both of them.
But 33, but a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. Problem in the story. How does a Samaritan have compassion on a Jewish man? Because the bias says that's not supposed to happen. So if you go back, Old Testament, King Omri, one of the kings in the divided kingdom, Omri becomes king. He buys a hill area, a mountain area, names it Samaria, builds a city called Samaria. And King Omri was a different dude. He was just like, y'all just pretty much do whatever y'all want to. They just kind of doing a free for all. They're intermarrying. They're setting up statues. They create a new mountain to worship on. So there becomes this tension between the people who are trying to follow God and King and the people who are under the leadership of King Omri. So these Samaritans now, people who live in this region, they're connected to the story of God. but their worship practices are different.
Mhm.
Their marriages are different. Their
Mhm.
lifestyle is different. It's so they're known as half breeds, right? The almost.
Mm.
And the Jews are the pure people in this narrative. And because of this, there's the tension between Jews and Samaritans.
Mm.
So much so that Jews would walk around a Samaritan town rather than go through it. So when Jesus introduced this into the story, it causes tension because he's saying that there is possibility for a Samaritan to be a good person. And what's tough, man, is when we reject the idea that things can happen for us differently than what we expect.
Mhm.
So when you get to the end of the story, Jesus says, who was the neighbor? The lawyer doesn't even say Samaritan. He says, he who showed mercy on him. And Jesus says, go and do likewise. When I'm thinking about that story, I'm thinking about, and I think El Marie asked a great question here. How do we reconcile situations where our biases are shattered right before our eyes? Do we keep the bias? Or do we reject it?
Do one or the other, because cognitive dissonance will make you
Jesus in
crazy.
this story is like, yo, I know how our culture feels about Samaritans, but we could be wrong.
Yeah.
You could find compassion in a Samaritan before you find it in a Jew. And what do you do with that? What do you do with that?
Yeah.
As a person who is part of this culture, who was framed your life on this cultural, and this bias is explicit. And Jesus says, no, there's a possibility that the Samaritan, who we consider the half-breed or outcast or not pure person, could be the real God follower in this situation. The reason why I tell I wanted to read this story is because there have been things that have happened to me personally. I felt like God is saying this to me. You're going to do this. But I filled it in with all of these notions of how it's supposed to happen. So that when things start to make a shift in a certain direction, I found myself at times rejecting the opportunity because it looked like a Samaritan.
Man, oh man.
And let me just get a little bit closer to this. And Rose says, I think as SDAs, we tend to do this with anyone Catholic, and it's not appropriate. It did. Donna says we need to see others as Jesus sees them, in contrast to what has been perpetrated upon our community historically. And yes, it's a journey. There's a whole classification of people, of scenarios inside and outside of religious communities that we have deemed Samaritan constructs. So Chris, you and I went to Andrews, and we have friends that have gone to Andrews and Oakwood. And it's almost like in our circles of our faith community circles, if you didn't go to one of those schools, you're a Samaritan.
Dirty.
Or being in church culture, if your spouse doesn't come to church with you, you're a Samaritan.
Pariah.
Or if something happens to your children, if your children make different decisions than you would approve of, then you instantly become a Samaritan.
Vagabond.
Man, listen, I am African American. I know the terms are always shifting. I'm not always up on the vernacular. African American. My wife is Caribbean American. And I can tell you the tension in some of the communities that I've been a part of because I did not marry an African American. Samaritan.
Yeah. Yeah.
The people who go to 4-year college or university versus the people who go to a trade school. If you go to a trade school in many social circles, you are considered a Samaritan. Like we have all of these biases that we bring into implicit biases that we bring into our lives. And what if God is saying, listen, I need you to write this, I need you to start this ministry, I need you to push this initiative, but the person who's going to help you is Catholic. The major funder to your initiative might be a person who doesn't even believe in God.
Atheist.
The biggest counselor or advisor to your business might be a person who doesn't even have a college degree. And when these things start happening and you're like, nah, that can't be of God, because it's got to look like, sound like, be like everything that I thought it should be.
Yeah.
And what if God is saying, I'm about to shatter your bias? Will you hold on to it? Or will you reject it for the sake of the thing that he called you to do?
Yeah, you can only do one or two. I mean, one or the other. Like,
yeah.
When you hold something to be true and it's no longer true, you either have to continue lying to yourself and rationalize that maybe this was a fluke, or maybe this was, or you painfully sometimes adopt the new reality that has literally been set before your very eyes. You can't stay in the middle for too long, because you will go crazy. And if you don't, God has a way of putting someone in your path who asks the question, so for how long are you going to hold between two opinions?
Man.
If it's God, if it's these rascals over here, but I'm going to need you to choose. Better yet, let me help you out. Let's have a showdown. God is good at placing showdowns in our lives when we are still on the fence. You know, when I think of this, when I think of Luke 10, man, this is crazy. The go and do likewise is multi-layered. It's not just go and do likewise as what the Samaritan did for the Jew, but it's also go and do likewise as the Samaritan saw the Jew as his neighbor. You now, as the Jew, see the Samaritan as his neighbor. It's you know, and some people say, well, you know, it's about the Samaritan being the righteous person. The question was, who is my neighbor?
That's the question he was answering. Who was my neighbor? And
in this case, it was somebody who had no religious affiliation or a perverted religious affiliation, like if however you want to look at it. And it was the unlikely of persons that you would think would help in this scenario. And Jesus says, not only do I need you to do what the Samaritan did for the Jew and treat them as a neighbor, but I need you to show the compassion just like the Samaritan did. That, like, don't just see him as a neighbor, but take care of him more than what you, and that right there. So when Jesus is like, go and do likewise, it's a few things. I need you to change your mentality, change your bias. But then I also need you to adopt a more passionate or compassionate approach to how you would love your neighbor. He actually answered two questions. Who is my neighbor? Oh, it's the one that showed mercy. Well, not only do you do what he did, not only do you love someone like him, but you also do what he did. So go and do likewise. Like, and I think that what we have started to miss out especially in the New Testament, is that Jesus is shifting the people who did believe but still didn't see and understand who the Messiah was from this live a holy, sanctified, set apart life to I need you to integrate, because in this integration of treating your neighbor, you are a part, you're set apart, but it doesn't look like you're here and they're here. It looks like this. And I think that we missed that. We've missed that with also the banquet feast, where it was a set apart feast.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send the invitation to those who know me first. Oh, y'all don't want it? All right. Well, let's make it inclusive.
Cool.
We're gonna bring everybody in. And I think that we miss that when it comes down to our implicit biases, where we are now in the, I don't know what you want to call it, dispensation, whatever you want to call it, but where the kingdom of heaven is heavy on the DEI.
Bro,
diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yeah, like it's so much more about, because our side of we talk about it, be ye holy, be set apart, be sanctified. Yeah, okay. But the gospel requires you to be integrated, be united. And somebody out there is gonna be like, oh, he talking about an ecumenical. You know what? Come read Paul, and then let's come talk. Cause we ain't, there's this fear that, oh my gosh, if we intermingle, some people like to use the text. I'm gonna let you go. Some people like to use the text. Don't sit down and eat with them, and don't. You know who they talking about?
They don't know the text.
The believers who actually are the hypocrites. Don't associate with them. Set yourself up. And it's interesting that Paul would talk more about who you should separate yourself from within the body versus who you need to actually be connecting with and associating yourself with and reaching out to and forming relationships outside.
That's good.
Of the body.
But there are two things that have made this season of having a therapist uniquely difficult. The first one lasted an hour, the first session. And the construct in my mind of how am I gonna have, and it was like fleeting, right? But it was there. How am I gonna have a therapist that's Muslim who grew up going to Catholic school? And it lasted about an hour.
Yeah.
But I was kind of thinking about, if we start talking about religion and
how's that going to work?
How is that even going to work? Like silly things, but this implicit bias that comes up, right? And I'm not even, you know me, I'm not even on that.
Yeah.
But I thought about it throughout.
It's a logical question too, though. Like,
question.
Yeah.
How are we going to do this? What's that gonna look like? So that lasted for like the first session, and we're like a year into this. So that's not even on my radar anymore. But the other one was stronger. And it was, and I'm going back to something you were mentioning before. It was this weight that in African American culture and Caribbean culture, you ain't supposed to talk about your business. So this idea, this framework that, man, we don't talk about home business, or we don't talk about, you got to keep people out of your business.
Don't show them your hand, and
you can't tell people what's really going, and navigating. That's a huge part of Black culture.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of it that you hold everything close to you so that it kills you, but you hold everything close to you, and talking about those things is a betrayal. So you're wrestling with, man, I'm unpacking these things from my personal narrative.
Yeah.
Am I betraying my culture because I'm talking about my business?
Hence why some of y'all haven't written y'all book yet. Or the business that's going to heal certain people based on your past.
Yeah.
But because for some of us, I'm putting myself in that bucket. It's not because of the fear of if you're not going to succeed. It's because there's some stuff that just is going to also unpack other people's stuff.
Yeah.
And to trust that God is saying, yeah, I know, but I didn't tell you to do it now. Just keep it on your radar. That's another thing too. Sometimes it's not to do it right away.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Told y'all the story of when he told me I was going to graduate with my first grad degree.
Yeah,
they happened till 10 years later. Did it need to? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do know is that having gotten it, not just the appreciation for it, but the leverage and the timing of when that happened, so much better than if I just got it and went out. Yeah.
Listen, look at man. Let's do El Marie, April, and then come back to Holly, because there's a string here, right?
Okay.
So El Marie says, most clients ask me up front if my work is Bible based, because if it is, they don't want to come again. Like that.
Yeah.
Because I think the idea is like, oh, wait a minute, you're gonna try to like Christianize me?
Yeah.
Like you gonna try to sermonize me? Nah, I don't want that. I that thought that how a person said, some people say I'm not a Christian therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a therapist who happens to be Christian.
Yeah.
They're not always the same.
Yeah.
Thing.
So can I use a quick example with that too, though?
Yeah,
sometimes we paint ourselves in that box, unfortunately, and so that might be a narrative that you would have to, in a sense, battle with for the rest of your career, profession, life. I don't know, because I think of two rap artists right now who one has to continue saying,
"Okay,
I'm not a Christian rapper. I'm a rapper who is Christian," and somebody like Toby Nwigwe. He is a believer.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that he started, y'all gotta catch this. It wasn't from the man. And if you just think about, for those of you that know who I'm talking about, cool. If not, then sorry, but this is just the analogy that I have right now. For one artist, almost every lyric that he had was connected to a scripture or something that was explicitly biblical.
Mm-hmm.
So when now he started to become more, not become, but to communicate in his lyrics more of a, for lack of a better word, Black consciousness, social justice. People are like, oh, you switching it up now. What happened to keeping Jesus in your lyrics? And da 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 da. Little did they know that his mother, how he grew up, his mother was a Black Panther. He grew up in that.
Mm-hmm.
It just never came out in his music. And so now, as implicit bias, now that he's, especially as things, the racial tide, things have kind of shifted, his music is reflecting what's actually going on, but through his Christocentric lens, people don't see that. They see, oh, you trying to be more mainstream. Now you got another person on the other side, artist, who is a believer, but you don't hear him. As a matter of fact, he says, try Jesus, not me. Like, right?
These hands.
And still a believer. And this is something I don't think that we can, that many of us can wrap our heads around. Well, how can you be a believer, but then you got certain people on your guys? That's another discussion for another day. I will tell you this though: the people who now wants to collaborate with him, they understand that there's certain things that either they can't say, or if they do say it, it gets blocked out.
Mm-hmm.
Two different lanes. Both are believers, but now the role or the road that you take is going to be different, because implicit bias is for either one. I guarantee you, if Toby starts hitting, maybe not, I don't know, but if he starts pulling a little crazy, they're gonna be like, "Oh, bruh, I don't know about that."
Yeah.
vice versa. So there is implicit bias from even the people that we are choosing to serve based on how we already have operated in our lives.
Listen, April said, I don't want no SDA therapist.
Real
Listen,
talk, man.
I
My implicit bias is real talk. All right.
mean that ooh.
Yeah, like no, you well, let me say no. Yes, April, yes, you have bias again. No, I do too, but because of certain experiences, I do too.
Circles. The
Yeah.
circle's small. It's like half a degree of separation.
Yeah. Because there could be people, April, that are on a different side, of the same coin of the denomination, who are just like, oh, I would love. It's the only. It's like, oh, well, do you, bro?
Yeah.
Do you, sis? Like, all right. Yeah.
Let's go back to April's. Well, and I want to Holly's as well. How do we deal with church versus spiritual person?
Yeah.
We got people saying like, I'm religious, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, or I'm not part of a system or whatever. And that kind of comes out in our interactions. What also comes out in our interactions are the bias for our particular faith community that we've wrestled with for years is judging the validating a person based on their denominational affiliation.
So disgusting.
So we jump straight to, are they Adventists? Like that like, yo,
the best thing that
I made a great dentist. Oh, okay, cool. Are they Adventists?
Yeah.
Like
you don't know Adventists were broken. So yeah,
we have April said maybe a bias against, maybe our bias, some of our bias for, like, if you're a part, and even when we're looking at Luke 10, how many Jewish people in that construct, as Jesus telling this parable, is saying, I would rather have a Jewish person walk down the street and pass me by versus a Samaritan. Because all Samaritans are terrible. And all Jews are great if we're comparing the two groups. And Jesus is like, nah.
And let's make something very clear. If let's go there. How about we hop right into it?
Yeah.
If you're talking about building a strong community, then implicit biases and keeping things in the family is a very successful way of doing it. If you're talking about evangelism, it don't work. So if we are going to talk about, and we've probably heard this, especially within the Adventist community, making sure that Black Adventists keep things within, or maybe not even just Black, but just why can't we have a strong, circulation of money within our denomination, or even in our local community, amongst our own believers, like our Jewish counterparts do? Because let's be real, they do.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
Cool, do that, but don't think that by doing that you are furthering the God. I don't want to hear that. You aren't furthering the gospel by thinking that is what unity looks like. The unity that God is talking about, Jesus is talking about in John 17, when he says, listen, it's by your love that they're going to see. And by seeing, they're going to want to experience the God that you are serving. Isn't when you get your money together and your money is in order, and now you are successfully building a Black Adventist Wall Street. That's not why people are going to come. They'll come, but they'll come if not for the handout, to be a part of. How do I learn how to do that? How do I learn how to be successful and build a legacy? That's another buzzword now, generational wealth and legacy. Cool. That's still not the gospel.
It's still not the gospel.
Gospel is Jesus came for broken people. He left and he's coming back for those people who are now whole in him. Like, that's gospel. So I think that we don't want to demonize the fact that within communities there will be biases, there will be people who need to build strong. Nothing is wrong with that. However, you're going to have to do a both and, because what's going to happen is you will end up like the priest and the Levite who's walking past the person who doesn't look like you, because we already do it in our churches.
Mm-hmm.
Did we answer a question? I think there was a question that was being thrown out there. I think I know Donna had one. I think that was it Holly talked about the church and the spiritual. Okay. So everybody lives within a system.
All of us do.
If you decided, but it takes humility. It takes humility to understand that you are subjecting yourself to a system, because based on what she had mentioned. So where is it? Where is it, P? When she said, what did she say? Go ahead and find it. She was talking about like the church and the spiritual. Okay. There's another. Yeah. The monkey wrench. How do we deal with churched versus spiritual people? Yeah. You deal with them how Jesus did. But here's the interesting thing. If you came across a person who believed that nothing matters, there is a system that goes behind believing that nothing in this world matters.
And that's a system.
It's a philosophical worldview called nihilism.
Yep.
Friedrich Nietzsche, I think, is the one that. And so whatever we choose to believe, if we're saying I'm just a spiritual person, they may not believe it, but you better believe it on their behalf, that there is a set of steps, that they have subjected themselves to, because you can only, as a human being, float so long in just not doing things until you're even floating becomes your system.
Yeah.
People don't want to hear that, but you're just not floating. Eventually, because of how we are wired as human beings, your floating will become a routine. And so as soon as you think you found a space that seems normal, I'm out. That's a routine.
Mm-hmm.
You found your system.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you are in a spiritual place, but the spiritual place now feels as if it's requiring something from me to do more in order to receive or to feel or to do, and you check out and you find something else, you've created a system of hedonism. Like, there is a system in place. So I wouldn't even say how do we deal? and technically, in a sense, we are all churched. In some way, we have our own religious affiliations.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. I don't wrestle or try to argue with people who don't feel like they're not.
No.
I don't even think I have those kind of conversations when, like, I don't really, because we don't have to get to that point. I now understand where you're coming from, where you don't have to feel as if I'm trying to project or Christianize or do, to make you fit into a construct that you're not already in. I'm going to come to where you are, learn where you are. And when I say that, I don't mean I'm going to condescend like Jesus had to do for us. We're in the same hot mess together on this place called Earth. I'm just now learning and understanding where you're coming from. Bro, it took me a while. It took me a minute to understand that, especially because of some of the religious affiliation practices that we have, where we are teaching people the truth. And so I'm going to come down to where you are and unlock truth for you so that you can experience a full life in Jesus Christ. Really?
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing that you can teach me.
Nothing. No. It's one way.
I got all the truth.
It's one way.
Wow. That's not the most arrogant, pharisaical approach to living. And with that, it took a while, man, to learn and also exposing and connecting myself with other people who aren't like me. What you're saying back to what you're saying, when you realize that a lot of the people that you're hanging out with look like you, sounded like you, it starts to break down, where even in your denominational construct, when you start to connect with people who you realize, wow, so we have the same affiliation of faith, but the perspective,
don't believe the same thing,
bruh. And then you're just like, huh? So then who's right?
Oh, yeah. And I love what Jesus says to the Samaritan woman.
Yeah.
Because the Samaritan woman is referencing the background. Yeah. She's like, yo, this is our mountain.
Yeah.
Like Jacob built this well, and we have history too.
Mm.
It's different from y'all history. We have history too. And
Yeah.
Jesus, like, yo, it's gonna come a moment where the mountain don't even matter.
Right. Right.
Eventually, the construct that you live by and the
Yeah.
one that my people live by, eventually that's not even gonna matter.
We gone. Hey, speaking of matter, and I drink too much water, y'all. I'll be right back.
Out of control. All right, so I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna pull out some of these comments while Chris takes a break for us. El-Marie says the thing is that creating a safe, non-judgmental space is a ministry. People assume that there's immediate judgment when we say Christian, furthermore SDA, and that's true. People, that the assumption is when you present yourself as a Christian, you're automatically going to judge another person. They want to be able to address their issues without fear. And maybe it's the way we Christians present ourselves to the world, very unlike Christ in many regards. And I think this goes back to what Chris was just saying. Now, sometimes the interpretation is we come on the scene imparting wisdom and knowledge and wanting to transform a person, but we can't learn anything from anybody else. Rose says a big reason why younger generations are leaving the church is because we have failed to be authentic, because we are concerned about the assumed implicit biases that they may have about our life. If they knew the true person we are. Marie says, my teen children say the church people are hypocrites. They prefer real people who have flaws and struggle and are honest, not those who keep a particular image. Whew, man, y'all coming in warm as we're finishing up this conversation. Hazel says, if we allow God, he will open our eyes and hearts to all people. Her business partner was working with her to erect her styling business is a Christian woman. Not the same denominational affiliation, but she's spiritual, honest, filled with integrity, creative, wise. And it's tough because we have the assumption sometimes that people who are not just we have the assumption. Sometimes we preach that. Like we preach that other people are basically Samaritans because they don't go to church with us, and that we can't learn anything from them. It's really gross when you think about it. So we're praying blessing on the business, Hazel, and grateful that you found someone to help you, to partner with you, not help you, your business partner as well. Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was gonna say I didn't want to. I don't know where we landed. Both Jesus and Paul talks about sectarianism, wholeheartedly against it, and one of the things that it's difficult to undo. It's like this knot that's tightly wound, is to try to become a purist in one's faith and one's practices and one's religion and whatever it is. It's just like family. There's certain things that you just can't undo, right? Things are, it's time is moving forward, and you can't go back in time and go back to how things are. It's not a Marvel movie. We don't have the control over the variants. You just got to roll with what it is.
You had to
and
say
I think
variants.
Listen here. And that's where the grace of God comes in, because we are not supposed to have a denominational approach to this thing called following Christ. Every denomination begins as a sect, every single one. And Jesus talks about like, yo, bro, we ain't on that. Paul says we ain't on that. And every sect, once it becomes very organized, once you get enough people, it then forms into a denomination. So all of our denominations have implicit bias.
All of them.
And with every implicit biased approach to the word, there are going to be things that we intuitively reject or even accept based on the bias.
Yeah.
And that is what, man, that's even what Paul was trying to like, yo, listen, I know y'all talking about Apollos and me, and it ain't about that. If you believe, you believe. Christ is the foundation. So if you believe this, okay, you believe that, but we're still one. And I think that what we started to do was we started to find people who looked and did and practiced and believed particular things, and then we just hung out with them. And it makes it harder to evangelize. It makes it harder to spread the good news. It makes it harder to actually share, because what you're doing is you are now sharing an implicit biased gospel. And anybody that receives the gospel that is not in line with your implicit bias, you reject.
Wow.
Which is why many times before somebody can actually come into your church, they need to publicly go down the list of things that they already said yes to. They need to now stand in front of the entire body and to be voted in. I thought God already voted them in. So now they need to be voted in before they actually get immersed to be baptized. Yo, we got this thing messed up, y'all. And because of that, what's going on is we have created some barriers, man. We've created these barriers for people to actually want to be a part of our community of faith.
Yeah.
But if you don't believe these specific implicit biases, this may not be the place for you.
Yep.
And so anyway, man, I just wanted to throw that in there, that when Jesus is talking about unity, when Paul calls out Peter in Galatians 1, he's like, yo, hold up. We don't do that here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why you sidestepping now that your Jewish buddy's coming? Like, we ain't on that.
Yeah.
When God himself had to roll out the sheet in front of Peter
and be like, yo,
not just biased Peter, racist Peter. And be like, don't you ever call any of these animals unclean. That we out here calling people dirty all the time, bro.
Oh man,
spitting all over my mic. Like I think that this is where, when you said last night, Matthew 24, and when the gospel is preached, that's when the end will come. Y'all, we already got the floods, we already got the earthquakes, we already got the tsunamis, we already got the fires, we already got the wars and rumors of wars and nations rising against it. We already got all that. What we don't have is the gospel being preached. What we don't have is people actually seeing the unified body of Christ.
Yeah.
They don't see that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a part of a denomination that's segregated, man. Here's the problem with that.
You're going to touch some other buttons with that one.
Let's go ahead, man. I want to push them buttons. I'll punch them buttons in the face. My problem is, then where would you go, right?
Yeah.
And that is easily answered. Mess somebody up tonight. Some of us think that in order to be a part of a legitimate group of followers, that you need a particular officer. Some people who are voted in. Nomination committee apparently is happening this year again, y'all. And if you aren't specifically elected to an office, then you really don't have a legitimate church. Says who? Go church, man. The best thing that happened to me.
Are we adding that to go pray? Go church?
I'll go church, man.
I mean, if you think about it, right? We're not connected to anything.
No. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And even when we look at, the protector and shield against worldly practices such as racism, the implicit biases can be a protective guard. And, and Holly's referencing the Black church.
Yeah,
we're still talking about a black church within a segregated construct.
Yeah,
like it's a protective guard.
Mm-hmm.
So we're reaching out to the world around us and asking the world around us to join us in our march toward the kingdom.
Yeah.
While at the same time we're fighting for recognition and validation from our governing organization.
Yeah.
And often our arms are stretched beyond capacity. Mm-hmm. Because we're like, which is the greater fight? The fight for acceptance and validation, equal opportunity, better administration of funds and equitable practices from our governing organization, or
Mhm.
fighting to connect with the people in our community that need to hear the gospel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, and the pendulum swing,
Yeah.
just like any other issue, we find people will swing both ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people come in, and when they learn the history, they're like, wait a minute, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then we start again, like you said before, with our bias conversation.
Yeah.
And how we frame what actually is going on in our spaces. So we got to really, going back to the Socratic method, the Socratic questioning, we have to ask it on all levels of where we are. Where are our biases negatively impacting what we're called to do as an individual? Because that's the question we started with. As a household, as a faith community, as a community at large, as an organization. Where if somebody walks in the room and says, I'm ready to help y'all, but they don't look like or sound like, are we gonna say no?
Yeah, and I think that speaks to Holly. I think, Holly, we might be on the same page. You say a safe space should bar against certain worldly practices like racism. Yeah. So and especially when we're talking about the Black church, and I mentioned earlier, and I think if you said it should be both, I'm not too sure what exactly you might be referring to, because I don't see the.
I think she was referring to fighting for equity within the organization.
Okay.
Fighting to reach marginalized in our own community.
And that's exactly my point. This idea, mentioning earlier though, that why not be unified, especially ethnically? Like, why not have that? I think it's very important, especially now. And so, especially for those who don't understand, like, why do people push for, like, having, Black financial systems and banks? Well, historically, it's hard to get certain things, to build businesses and, houses, when it's stacked against you. So having those institutions, my approach though, or my reasoning is, having those things is not the be all and end all to the gospel. It should be part of the means to what the gospel is about. The problem we run across having is, if we aren't careful, we can very well be, as minorities, very well, let's just say, if it were to happen, because sometimes we don't think it does, we can end up being very strong people, financially, physically, mentally, like there. And what very well happen is we could end up being, some people may argue with me, but that's okay, not the oppressor, but we would not answer or not respond to those who implicitly, the implicit bias, don't look like us. Like, this ain't for you. You already privileged because of how you look. This is for us.
Why are you trying to come to the cookout?
This is where gospel, this is where evangelism, this is where it breaks down. This is where the both needs to happen. You should be able to take care of yourselves. We talked about in Acts 6, right? Where Paul was like, it wasn't Paul, it was Peter, was like, yo, y'all need to handle this within your own community. Since the Grecian, Hebrews, y'all aren't getting what you should be getting for the neglect that wasn't even intentional. And even if it was, let's find people amongst you to handle that. Yep. Very similar.
Among yourself.
Black church, Grecian church, very similar. Handle it. However, the numbers are not just going to grow with just your kind.
Grecians. Yeah.
Right. With just your ethnicity. It explodes because everybody is seeing and experiencing, oh, wow, this is what I need to be a part of. Because even though there are some internal issues, it's not inherently racist. Now, are there people who probably got saved who still have racist issues? Yes, Peter.
Yes.
Peter did.
Yeah.
But somehow the grace of God, and I'll always come back to this, took all of these people in, and the goal was bigger than just them. And so I don't know how else to
Man,
I just feel like we are systemically, there's
that's
certain denominations, including the one that more and more I'm just like, it's just like, if this is how we are systemically, not individually, but systemically, by that time, bro.
man, and that's tough. I think it's tougher the older you are. If you have this conversation with your parents' generation, it's like, nah, mm-mm.
Because it goes back to the question of where am I going to go?
We've
And my answer is go
fought for so long,
yeah,
and we still don't get respect at. And even looking at what we were talking about before, the nuances within, even how Aaron talks about the Adventist Black Church, the nuances within that. I was doing a church board, a virtual church board retreat a few months ago.
Mhm.
And the person who had been a member of this particular church for a long time, 20 plus years, was just talking about how she still didn't feel fully accepted in her church.
Yeah.
Because she didn't have the classic boxes checked off. And this lady was in her late 60s.
Oh, wow.
He said, yeah, I still don't quite feel like I belong because I didn't do this or do that. I didn't go here. I wasn't raised. I come from this background. And when certain things happen, I still feel like an outsider.
Got it.
So where are internally we repeating the practices that externally or as a group or community we're fighting against relative to outside forces, but we perpetuate on the inside? And I know that's a conversation that people kind of stray away from, and to say, no, the bigger issue or the bigger fight is this external pressure, external force.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people inside of communities that we have framed out as safe spaces that are suffering under implicit bias.
It's rampant in the Caribbean culture. Colorism is real.
Oh, bro.
It's real. And someone who's done quite a bit of marketing, it is real. And who you're trying to attract and draw. This, and Aaron brought up a great point. I think it also relates to what Holly was referring to as well. We do need a safe space. And she says here, however, the Black community needs a safe haven or a comfortable space, and yet at the same time. And I think that there are different camps, there are different philosophies.
Oh.
I haven't thought through, by the way, y'all, as we're talking this thing out, I haven't thought through what side or which particular philosophy I am under yet, because I haven't I haven't systematically, using that word, or Socratically used the questions that would lead me to what would bring me to make the same decision or choices over and over again, so that I'm not all over the place. I will say this, if God is moving, and there is just seasons and just in how the church has received light, and just how they move. He has created the opportunity for us here, especially in America, who have experienced racism, like racism, not like 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s racism, right? To be able to create an established organization that we can call church, or the Black church, right? There was a time where you couldn't even do what? Congregate where and how? Like, it wasn't even a thing. And to be able to even have that space
Mhm.
within the oppressive nature of what America was / is, it really that's a huge win, where we now have this space. And then at the same time, it then begs the question, and this is where the resolve is, Aaron. I personally, I don't have the answer to that. Is have we turned the safe haven into a fortress where it's like, come in and this is just where we are, but it makes it harder because the thicker the walls are, the safer the space is, the more filtration that we have. Does it make it easier or more difficult to actually then go ye therefore?
Do the work.
And if we're going out, the question is, are we going out to bring them in? Or are we going out to establish another safe haven out there? One could be considered the light on the hill, the other one the salt of the earth, right? Those of us who are called to kind of come in and bring people in, and others who are, they have these different philosophies with Matthew 5. And I guess our challenge is with even in that, what implicit biases would I be bringing to individuals as I want to establish safe havens outside of the one that I might have grown up in? What does that look like? And are those implicit biases okay if I believe it's creating a safe space? I don't know, man. Because there are biases that'll come with ain't everybody out here, especially in the faith, for you. So we got a group that's here that's going to make sure that you will be taken care of. Man, that's real. But is it, it's like,
what did T. Marshall Kelly say? As quoted by Roger Hernandez.
Man.
But when the church was singing only hymns, only anthems, and only spirituals, it was its most racist. And the bias of, hey, if we just get back to that,
okay,
we'll be in a better place.
Make America great again.
You try to get a copyright strike.
You're right. If we no longer on here, y'all just blame me for it.
Listen, and I think it just kind of reveals, as we're wrapping up this conversation, it just kind of reveals how layered and nuanced all of this is for each and every one of us. And as we're looking at systems and organizations and communities and looking to hold leaders accountable who are also wrestling as individuals with these same ideas, it just really brings it back to, if a construct itself never changes, how do I become a safe space within the construct? How do I stay in a mode of continuing to check and question the personal bias that I hold so that people are safe around me?
Yeah, because we all have biases.
I'm not blocking the blessing that God is sending my way because of these things that I hold.
Yeah.
And you're right, Chris. We all have them, man. It's not like some of y'all don't like ketchup. And you don't know why you don't like ketchup.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
Yeah.
You just don't know why you don't. But something happened in your story and your narrative. And what's appropriate for us is to hold space for the stories and the narratives that each other and the perspectives that we all have. Because if you say we put us all in a space and we're all working toward the same goal, there's going to be tension because our methodologies are going to be different.
Absolutely.
Based on our experiences. If we say our goal is to solve hunger in marginalized communities in Miami, and you handpick us to be on the team to do that, we'll probably spend 6 months arguing. Possibly. Because we are all bringing our bias. Even though we're all working toward a greater good, we're all bringing our bias and our backgrounds.
Yeah.
into these situations. Yeah. Then go back to the beginning, y'all. Go back to the beginning and ask, what's the thing that you feel like God is calling you to do? And how could your visualization of how that's supposed to turn out actually get in the way?
Yeah.
Because God is shattering your biases as you speak. And you have to make the choice. I think El Marie said before, do I hold on to this perspective, or do I let it go? Because there's no middle.
There is no middle.
No apologies needed, Dr. Holly.
Absolutely none whatsoever.
This is a place for conversation. It is not the place for complete agreement and consensus.
Yeah.
We got different perspectives here. And this is where we kind of hash out and you know, those conversations like after church, there's no what do we do?
The consensus.
Here's what we do. No, it's this is something we're wrestling with personally and in community.
Yeah. I think and it's beautiful because, you know, because once again, you know, this is something that Paul has. What's happening here is how you avoid creating yet another sect or separation with a whole other structure. He says, so for those of you that don't want to eat nothing that has no eyes and no meat in it, and for those of you that think that, you know, everything is cool, but let's not argue about that. we let's respect the, and so even then he's saying at the end of the conversation, there will be no consensus, and that's okay. But to know that the consensus is still the foundation of Jesus Christ. And I think that, you know, if we, as Delma brings up here, you know, continue to be guided by the Holy Spirit, because our personal biases, listen, it's just some stuff that we just are. And here's a crazy thing, Pete. It's not even that it's right or wrong. I think that's where we start to have the problem, is when I believe that your particular bias or your opinion, maybe I should use a different word here, but the way that you approach certain things, maybe even in the spiritual realm, is not just different, but is wrong.
Yeah.
And that is where we start to say, you know what, I'm gonna go find other people who think that what I'm talking about is just right.
Yeah.
You go ahead and do the same. And then when we all come back together, you still gonna have the same.
It's the same thing.
And I think that for many denominations, the split has happened because there was we don't think that this is right or wrong. You know, like we're splitting because we believe that we are right on certain things and y'all ain't. Or there's a particular person that, you know, and so
Colleen told me that's how half the churches in New York got started.
Right. Man. But anyway, all of that to say that what we shouldn't allow to happen is for the very biases that we do have to not just create this unresolved tension between each other. I think that's the beauty of what Christianity should be about, that you have different beliefs. When I say beliefs, I'm not talking about like the core beliefs, but different approaches and perspectives to certain things, but you can still live together.
Yeah.
In unity. I think that that's where it is. But what you shouldn't allow it to do is allow those biases to, as you know, P, I was going to say something. I'm going to retract it, because God telling us certain things, he's already baked in our biases. And so he will use what he already knows about how we're going to approach what he's telling us to do to make his will be done anyway. And I was going to say, try not to let your bias get in between. But you know what, y'all? Even at the end of the day, God knows how to circumvent your own biases so that his will be done.
Hey, my youngest daughter doesn't like mashed potatoes. And she's still in the family, so her out.
Yeah.
We can survive, and we cannot survive. We can thrive from different perspectives. And I think it goes back to what we were saying before.
Yeah.
It is not, man, how do I get rid of my bias? That's not how it works.
Right.
It's how do we check it? How do we test it? How do we push back on it? How do we do the right questioning?
Yeah.
So that we can move forward, and being okay with the discomfort of, man, I don't see it how Holly sees it. I don't see it how Aaron sees it. Man, I don't know. I'm not quite sure I agree, April or Pastor Miguel. And that's okay. Like, we don't have to.
But then ask the question, like you said, with your friend, or not you specifically, but have you ever been to the restaurant?
Have you? No, I don't know. I just don't like it.
Then now you have to have that discussion.
That's true. Why don't I like Cerese's comment?
Right.
Why don't I like Delma's comment or Donnie Lane's comment? What's behind that?
Yeah.
That questioning comes in. And I think that's where a lot of us get into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be just the construct we grew up in. No, you don't question.
Yeah.
Really? Because Jesus is like, disciples got questions, and Jesus is like, okay, let's answer them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, sorry we don't have a consensus.
It's like that most of the time.
Most of the time we talk. Yeah. That's it. And it just reveals the fact that it's impossible to know everything. It's impossible to have all the right answers and right ideas and nice little bows. That's why you gotta pray about it. Like, seriously. It's not a game, it's not a joke, it's not a cute tagline. It's a way of life. And especially when it comes down to your bias getting in the way. Mm-hmm. And as you look at this coming week, ask yourself, Lord, how is my bias getting in the way of what you want to set me up for? So, yep.
And don't confuse bias with ignorance.